Hey guys, this is Pat, and I am with Teddy.
Yep.
And Teddy is the owner of Craft Kafe in St. Petersburg. There are 2 locations, and I am a frequent flyer of Craft Kafe. I love it. It is a totally gluten-free bakery. They have all sorts of goodies. They sell really good coffee. They use Buddy Brew, which is one of my favorite coffees. And I love Teddy. He is wonderful. He is just such a connoisseur of good food and just good vibes in here. And this location is very close to where Chuck and I live. And so I'm going to ask Teddy some questions about Craft Kafe, the 2 locations. And so, how did you get started, and when did you start Craft Kafe?
So I guess the inception point, I was like 17 and I tore my left ACL, MCL, and I didn't want to gain weight. So I started working out all the time, and I bought Arnold Schwarzenegger's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, and he had mentioned something about gluten. And then I started reading about from different doctors like Dr. Perricone and Raymond Weil. And gluten always kept coming up as a source of inflammation in the human body. And I'll never forget, like the New York Post is, a source for gossip in sports. I would always read it growing up in New York, but their food section, they'd always put like trendsetters. So this gentleman opened up a pizzeria in Greenwich Village, and it was a gluten-free pizzeria, pasta, Italian place.
Wow.
And it was like a big thing, and he said in the article when they interviewed him, he had like a 94% customer retention rate.
Wow,
so
amazing.
I went, I visited it, I saw so many people there, I was talking, at that time maybe I was like 20 years old, 21 years old, and I come back to my dad with this genius idea to do an organic gluten-free diner in Manhattan. And like, there was a location on 7th Avenue, like 51st, 52nd Street, and his partners were giving up the lease, and I wanted him to take it over so I can work there, I went to school at Bronx Science, I went to Fordham University, but I always had this entrepreneurial spirit that I want to work for myself.
Nice.
So I told my dad, let's open up a gluten-free the diner, and he's like, what the hell is gluten-free? Like
well,
in his
back
Greek
then
accent.
it wasn't even probably known about.
So they kind of shot me down, and as I went along my stages of life, I moved full-time to St. Petersburg in like 2006, 2007, and my family, we own Skitter's restaurant on St. P Beach. It's almost 30 years now.
Familiar with that restaurant, of course.
And there was these 4 older ladies playing bridge every Tuesday. So it was like my first or second day back from New York, and there was a waitress, I hadn't never worked with her, and she comes up to me, go talk to this lady, she can't eat anything. So I go to the table, and empathy is such an underrated human
I love this
thing.
Yeah.
Where when I see someone having a question, I want to go for the outlier first, because if you do that, then you take care of everybody else, right? So I went up to her, I'm like, miss, what are you allergic to? She's like, I have celiac disease. And like a light bulb went up in my head. And her name's June Radcliffe. I get emotional when I talk about her. I told her, come tomorrow and I'll make you a gluten-free pizza from scratch. And she looked at me, for real? You're gonna do that for me? I'm like, of course. She comes the next day, make her the pizza, and she hugs and kisses me. And the next day comes with, she made me a card with construction paper and butterflies, thanking me that she hadn't had a pizza in like 10, 15 years.
I'm sure.
And it just inspired me that I put it on the menu. Then I got a separate toaster, buying Moody's bagels. Then I got gluten-free pasta, we're boiling the water. Then I start training the staff. Everybody's yelling at me like, what the hell, why are we doing this? But my persistence, within 6 months, like during the season, we sold like 1 week 400 gluten-free items. And my dad saw like a family of 15, and they were coming breakfast and dinner because 2 of the kids had celiac disease. And then he saw this growing every
The
week.
trend was growing.
So like if you Google, like even now, if you still Google gluten-free St. Pete, Skitters comes up sometimes before Kraft, which is really ironic, right? But from '07, I had a head start.
Of course.
And I love that, it's like the spirit of what America was founded on, that
Of course.
entrepreneurial spirit where it's like to gain by merit. That's the best thing. I hate advertising, spending
And heart.
money.
You have a heart. You definitely have a heart.
Like
and
I don't
you
want to
do.
spend money on advertising or
No.
buy reviews. I
Yes.
want to earn that
Yes,
trust
I know you
from
do.
the customer.
Sure.
So I did this. By 2011 and 12, my ankle, like I was working 80, 90 hours a week for like 4 or 5 years. I thought I was Superman. And I had ankle surgery and my stomach kept bothering me. And I'm on my crutches in Publix down here. And I saw like the freezer section, some gluten-free muffins. They look so dry and sad.
I know which ones you're
And-
talking about.
Like I was thinking to myself, do people with celiac disease have a bakery? Because I grew up in New York. I didn't have one bakery. I had like 10 bakeries.
Oh
around.
my gosh, we had so many bakeries
Yeah,
up there.
within a
of
four
course.
block radius. I had Italian, Greek,
Of course.
French,
Yeah.
whatever you could think of,
Yeah.
you could find it, right?
Uh-huh.
So I started thinking about this, and I was at Earth Origins actually next door here.
Next door.
And I saw that the space was for lease, and I called up the landlord. I saw it, and I was recovering from my ankle surgery, and then like 3 months passed. She told me she had given it to someone else, but she would call me back, right? And she calls me back. If the deal fell through, and
It was meant to be for you.
I signed the lease.
This was your space.
And
it's a great location,
so like
great
the
space.
the vision and the empathy for someone that can't have gluten, that can't have cross contamination. To me, that was sacred.
It is.
You know?
So I know it's 100% totally gluten-free facility, and you make your own flour here. So tell me a little bit how that evolved.
So when I started like making stuff at home, I wanted to do like a regular pizzeria with a stone mill for fresh flour, because I had read in Italy like people rarely have celiac disease.
That's
and they
correct,
use
yeah.
like sourdough starters. And I had like another idea where I have a lot of them. I was telling my dad to do a pizzeria in Manhattan with a stone mill in the front and
Right.
just mill organic wheat berries, and the pizza's so much better because I bought a small electric mill for my house, and I was milling flour there, and the price of, let's say, organic rice flour or organic sorghum seed or sorghum flour, I was milling it and it was costing me like much less than buying the retail bag, and the texture was so much better.
Retail is so expensive.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like
of course.
it's insane.
astronomical. Yeah.
So, and I wanted to cut my costs as much as possible, so I am not that gluten-free bakery in Manhattan that's charging $18 for a loaf of bread.
Yes.
Where I want to be as reasonable as possible.
Of
Where
course.
I want it to be cheaper than if you bought the stuff and made it in your house. And this has been like the ethos of Craft Kafe in general.
And what year did you start?
I had signed the lease like 2013, and we opened up in 2015.
Wow, I
So
didn't
it
realize
took a
that.
while. The
Okay.
fire marshals of St. Pete, no one. They don't know what a restaurant oven is.
Okay.
And they make you put fire suppression systems that are the only municipality in the country that.
Wow, okay, I didn't realize it was that.
Yeah.
So I know, because we live right near here, and so Chuck and I live right near here, and we were waiting like patiently for the day you were open, because we're both gluten-free.
Yep.
And we love all your products. Can you tell me some things about your products?
I think part of success and accomplishment is you can't buy it, right? So the
No.
progression of being open-minded. So I started with gelato, if you remember, right?
Yes.
I wanted to make gelato from
remember
scratch.
that, yeah.
I bought all this equipment, over $100,000.
Oh my God.
And after a week, I knew that I wasn't going to be doing this
No
anymore.
gelato.
Because everybody, I love customer feedback. So because I'm flexible, and it's a lesson in business that most people don't teach. You could have a vision of what you want, but the customers that are providing for your living, they're the ones in control. So I always joke, people ask if I'm the owner. No, it owns me, and it's I'm much more happier, and my ego never gets involved because I'm only gonna do what people want. I'm gonna try my best at least.
Sure, absolutely.
So we started from where we started to where we are, where we've made so many things that we forget about sometimes what we made 5 years ago. Because we're always progressing. Where we've had pumpkin rolls that we didn't have in the beginning. We had the last year people going crazy for that. Or our Cinnabon recipe was a savory recipe that one of my bakers tried out, and she went to throw it out. They were like crying in tears. And I took the spoon, I'm like, don't throw it out, because I love texture. And I put it in my mouth, and I gave them high five. You just made Cinnabons, and it looked like I was, crazy.
Right.
But I used the texture to create another product.
That's
so
correct, sure. Well, you have a different vision than that.
Yeah, well, the experimentation,
Yes.
This is like the wild, wild west in a way, where there's no real gluten-free school of baking. To me, this is like an epitome of, how I view life, where if you don't, you have to keep educating yourself.
And changing and evolving.
Yep, always.
Yep. And I know you have delicious quiches and you're always changing those out. You have like 6, maybe.
Yeah, we have every day 5 flavors, and we do other
different
things.
kinds.
And like our
Sure.
pie dough, like my chef partner Ed Briones, I met him in the parking lot while I was building the store out. So I had another partner that was supposed to work, and like a month before we opened, he went to sell used cars, which he's very good at. But I didn't really have someone in the back. So from the vision of me being the baker, I ended up being the barista for like the first year. And he was riding his bike with his wife. He had just moved from like Connecticut. And we were talking, and he said he was a chef. He was out of the restaurant business, gonna go into insurance. And I just said, if you need, let's exchange numbers. And a week later, he calls me up. I'm like, just come. So he was like talking to me. He's like, yo, I'm gonna make some pie dough. We'll make quiche. I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And it's an antiquated item, but if you do it with the right love and the right ingredients.
Everyone loves your quiche. I mean, I order the quiche all the time. It's
and
delicious.
It's literally like our recipes, the carrot cake recipe, the quinoa batter. Those are labors of love that we did it in one shot because he has like 30 years experience.
Nice.
And to me, it was like I love working with people that share that passion, where we're like work soulmates.
So speaking of the people with passion, I've been coming here since you opened, and I see the same people working here. So you have a lot of longevity with your people working here, which is wonderful. And in this industry, you don't see that much.
Impossible.
It's really in hospitality. It's really impossible. So that says a lot for you. The store. It really does say a lot for you.
I had such a good education with, blessed with my parents. My father's been in the restaurant industry. He came from Greece with $100 and a pair of jeans.
That's amazing.
And the first day I went to work with him, I was like 13. And our restaurant's on 55th Street and 7th Avenue, Park Cafe in Manhattan. And we got there at like 3:30. I'm cutting lemons, squeezing fresh squeezed orange juice, right? And at 5:30, he goes to open the front door, and he brings me over. He's like, come here. So he points to the door. I'm like, what, the door? And he goes, no. Whoever chooses to come here, they can go to 1,000 other places. You always treat this with respect.
Nice.
So I'm 44, and every day I look at the door, I think of this.
Nice.
And I'm grateful for you, for the community, that it's a privilege that people feel they want to have a coffee, or they want to come and get a quiche or a muffin, and try to be the best that we can be every day.
Well, we had Easter at our house, and my brother and his wife moved here from Houston just recently. And so I know you sold out of all of your pies at Easter. And so my brother and my sister-in-law came here, I think Friday or Saturday, whatever day it was, and they bought a whole bunch of desserts, but not a pie because they were all sold out. But they, bought a whole bunch of things and brought that over for Easter, for desserts for everybody. And it was just, and it's like the first thing that goes. So it's interesting, even people who aren't gluten-free will kind of gear themselves to eat those desserts.
So to go back to your point about like the staff, I treat it like a sports team where
Nice.
when I meet someone that like the first employer I ever interviewed and the only one that I picked out of like a dozen people and I hired, he's still here, Jason.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, exactly.
It's almost it's over 6 years.
I know.
And
I know him
when
a
I
long
met
time.
him, I told him I don't want to know you next year. I want to know you 10 years from now,
Nice.
20 years from
He's
now.
such a great guy.
Because my dad, like his partners in New York, he got an opportunity from his partner to open up his first restaurant, and I've told everyone that works with me, if you want to work and develop, there's a path to ownership and to I want to get this out to as many places as possible.
Wonderful.
And it really isn't a monetary thing in the sense that the first one that I opened, if no one in his sane mind would do it, the amount of hours I put in for the financial risk and what it's making didn't make sense. But to me, it was a legacy project.
I understand.
Because my father's successful, and I don't want to be known as Nick's son. I want to be me.
Your own man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
And I had such a great education from him that I have the ability to do that because of him.
Sure.
And I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah. So tell me how the second location evolved.
So the second location,
Which is where? Where's it
it's
located?
on 2nd and Central on the
Yes.
corner, downtown St. Pete. So I was talking about that downtown didn't have a breakfast spot probably for 15, 20 years. So like we put in 2003 a deposit on Moon Under the Water, me and my father.
Oh, yeah.
I shook hands with him
Yes.
and said, don't show up. The next decade, I'll own the whole block. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
And he went to Greece and all his friends, there's nothing down there, don't do it. And that's how the story went. And then like the Birchwood, the Grails Hotel in 2008, 2009, I was gonna buy that with my dad. And I picked the wrong partner because our lawyer screwed up that deal. So the downtown location is 3rd times the charm for me.
It's a great location.
So
That whole outdoor
Yeah.
area is beautiful because it's covered.
it's exactly,
It's
I
protected.
can't ask for anything more.
Yeah.
So I went for dinner at the Mill when it first opened, and I knew Chef Ted from the Zamora and from the restaurant in Tampa that he had worked. And it was the 2nd or 3rd day he was open. I went and I asked for him, he came out, and he's like, oh, I found the spot that,
Right?
I found that breakfast spot we were talking about. I'm like, oh, cool, where? So, poor guy has partners. He's like, uh-oh. And he didn't tell me, he walked away. So I was like, okay. So I had parked where the James Museum is downtown.
Yes.
And I had to walk down the block from the Mill
Yeah.
on the corner.
Right.
So after dinner, I'm like, what is he talking about? Where's downtown? There's nothing available. And I look at the corner, and it was called Pata Negra, I think, and it was empty, like on a Thursday or a Friday night. And I just looked up the block and just started laughing, like, I found it. So I went and introduced myself to the owner,
Nice.
and I was humble to him. I was offering different options. He asked for an insane amount of money the first time, and then like 3-4 months later, he came, and
It's all about negotiation.
That's all there was.
And coming to terms.
being open-minded and
Yes,
not pushing
of
it.
course.
Like,
Exactly.
because you never know how you treat somebody, how it's going to affect them. Like, I'm sure other people tried to get it, and I was empathetic to his,
Sure.
I didn't want to put him down and say,
Right,
you
yeah.
suck. Give it to me, you're going to lose it for nothing. Like, most people are like, why are you giving him money? I'm like, because I want it, and the opportunity cost versus me not having it, to me, it's a generational location, just like the one, our first location,
Of
which
course.
is next to an organic supermarket where all the customers go by.
That's right.
So that's how, like, I look at things where my dad always told me in Manhattan, you get the corner, you pay a little extra rent. If it's visible, if it makes sense, it's worth it. And I, this is, I follow this
Yeah.
religiously.
And this is a great location because you have plenty of parking here.
And we're having a third location.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's going to be right on Kennedy Boulevard,
Okay.
on the block of Oxford Exchange, next to Fly Bar.
Nice.
So
Wonderful.
University of Tampa is right across the street.
Yes. I did not know about a third location.
Well, I signed it pre-COVID, right before the COVID. So,
Wow. Okay.
and hopefully we'll be open the next month or two.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'll have to check that out because I do go to Tampa
Yeah.
very frequently.
And I have
when
so
I'm
many
showing
people
houses
tell-
over there.
yeah.
I used to live in South Tampa. So what else can you tell me about just you? Some little thing about you that is different.
I think, in general, I'm always trying to think outside the box. And like one of my favorite things I learned, like my first year in college was philosophy class, and we read Plato's Republic, and like Plato's always kind of making fun of Socrates, and there was a part in the book where he's asking him, "Oh, your wife makes you wash the dishes every day, right?" And Socrates' response to him was, "I learned something new every time I wash the dishes."
Interesting.
And I think this is something that I hold dear to my heart. Whether I was playing basketball or I try to get there first, leave last, and put as much time as I can to something that in the end all we have is now. So,
well, I always found you to be a very humble man and very respectful of everyone in your industry. And
well,
very
it's not an easy industry.
respectful. And it's not, but this is why you have someone like Jason still working for you, and other people too. Like I come here and I see the same people. Then I'll go downtown and I'll see Jason working downtown too. So they're very adaptable to working at different locations, which is wonderful wherever you need them. And it's just always such a pleasure to see you. And so this is Community Conversations, and I really, really appreciate you doing this today.
Without the community, we have nothing.
I know.
And this is like,
it's true.
Sometimes we think so selfishly for 10 seconds not to wait for someone to cross the street or turn at a light. We get so angry.
I feel that way.
What's the point?
I totally.
We ruin our day ourselves.
I know.
My grandmother, one of the best things she taught me before she passed away was, in the end, all we take is our anger with us.
I love
We don't take any money or anything.
You're gonna make me cry.
Yeah.
How old was she when she
was
passed
about,
on?
I think, 80, 81.
Yeah.
But like working at Skitters, it's a little more elderly, and it's really sad, but like every 10, 15 years we have we go through, people passing away.
Sure.
So I would always ask customers, well, what's your favorite food you ever had in your life? What's the best place you ever went to? And if there's one piece of advice, one word,
nice.
Let me know. And I wish I would have recorded this with every customer I've done it to.
Yes. Well, maybe you'll start a trend now.
Yeah.
So what's your one word, if you have one word? Do you have one word?
Like one piece of advice?
Yeah.
I think and my dad's brother, before he passed away, he had lung cancer, like 66 years old. So I asked him, he's a chef, what's your favorite food? He couldn't tell me. He made the best lasagna I ever had in my life, right?
Wow.
And then I asked him, what's your favorite place? And he says, Oakland. So I'm like, California? He's like, no, Malaka, Auckland, New Zealand. So that's on my bucket list.
Okay.
And then I got the chills on my back when he's like, so I bought him 2 bottles of Metaxa. I got there at midnight. At 5 in the morning, he's probably like 120 pounds at this point. He died the next month. My cousin had called me to go see him, and he had drinking almost the first bottle. I woke up at 5. He's smoking cigarettes still.
Oh my God.
So I start drinking with him, and I asked him, what's your advice? And he's like, never hold a grudge.
Nice.
And it's the same like along the lines of my grandmother,
Don't take the anger in your heart.
Yeah, if you look at the history of religion and what is successful for humans, whether it's Buddhism or Christianity, they turn the other cheek. And I think it's more prevalent today than any time in our history.
I love it. I love you. I think you're wonderful. This was such a really great interview, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And actually, I'm going to hug you. Thank you.
All right.